tested 500 sports nutrition supplements. 92% didn't have in them what they said they had in them. That's insane.
All right, I'm here with my friend, CEO, pro athlete, Jeff Byers. So Jeff, we go way back. We've worked together on a couple different projects in the past, and I'm just happy that we kind of sit down and get to know each other a little bit more on a personal level. I know that we've done a lot of professional stuff together, but I'm happy to have this conversation today.
Yeah, likewise, Brian. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. So you grew up in the Midwest mostly, but you have like your fondest memories were growing up in Colorado. I personally, Colorado's on my hierarchy of places to live. It's basically at the top. But what were your fondest memories, and how did they shape you as a person growing up in Colorado?
Oh man, I'm gonna unwind that a little bit. First off, you said growing up in the Midwest. I have this like people call like Colorado the Midwest, or Chicago the Midwest, and there's nothing mid about Chicago being in the Midwest. Like Chicago is dead in the middle of the country, actually kind of east. If you like cut the country in half. Anyways, so yes, I grew up in the middle of the country mostly, and then in the Midwest, which I would consider Colorado because it's Middle West. And then, anyways, we could go down that rabbit hole of where it is. But Colorado was really good to me. Like I felt like I grew up kind of in between two up and coming cities, towns, between a place called Fort Collins and Loveland, Colorado, and had an awesome life. Kind of worked on a farm growing up as a kid. Like, my parents' neighborhood was like the first neighborhood in that was built out of farmland. And now I go back and it's like just houses everywhere. It's like suburbia. But like where the houses are now was where I used to move hay and muck stalls of horses and things like that. So, but I just remember being outside a lot, right? And just always, before high school, just always out exploring, adventuring, trying to stay out of trouble. But I played a ton of sports. That was kind of, my parents' goal was to get me as tired as possible, I think, all the time in life. It panned out really good. But, just always adventuring. And then went to high school and had a really awesome high school experience just with sports in school. So, I think just overall there was so much balance in life. And what I saw from my family and others was when you live in a place like I did, like you can have a lot, meaning like you can be super successful and have balance and still try and find the things you love. Like we moved there from the middle of America as my dad loved the mountains. And loved to be in the mountains and saw that. And I've kind of made the same move in my personal life, kind of being in LA for quite some time. And then moving to Utah, to Park City, to like have a little more balance in my life and be closer to the things that I truly love.
Yep. Yeah. I know we were talking about this before the pod started, but we live in South Florida now, and it's relatively flat. And we're essentially underwater in the swamplands. And when I landed in Colorado the first time, just like on a vacation, for some reason I saw the mountains when I landed, and I said, "Yep, I'm home. This is where I need to be."
Oh, so good.
What do you think draws people to the mountains? Like, what does the mountains do to people that we just, as soon as we land there, we just want to be there all the time?
That's a good question. I don't think the mountains draws everybody, and they're not for everybody. But I think people have a great amount of respect for like nature because they're so big. And if and the first time you see them, or I remember as a kid, right, going from Iowa, Illinois to Colorado to vacation, and like you would just see the mountains as you're driving into Colorado, just like come out of nowhere, and they're so big and so magnificent, and it's like very inspiring and humbling at the same time to think about like what those are, and then there's just like what is in them. I think is really special. But the beauty is undoubtedly something that draws people and calls you, and it's easy to get lost in them. But again, like I realize like some people don't love the mountains, or some people only will love to visit them. But like I love to live in them, and don't and that's just, we all have our different things.
What I know you mentioned you had a great upbringing and childhood and high school experience. You were obviously a very talented athlete, but what kind of student were you?
Yeah, that good question. Was had a very my house was very academic focused. In that I think I had 1B in high school, almost a 4.0 student, and it was just it was a non-negotiable to do well in school if you wanted to play sports, and that was what it was. And so we were raised to be very well-rounded, but that, right, what you do in school lasts for your life, and so that was a very, very core component of who we were. Both my brother and sister, I would say like I'm the bottom of the rung in my family. Brother and sister are incredibly intelligent and bright. Both went to law school, and all of that. Like I could never do that, but it was a ton of fun. And I really valued my experience as a student and a student athlete throughout high school and college, for sure.
Yeah. In high school, you dabbled in basically all sports, track, basketball, football, but ultimately, what landed you on football? What was that moment that you said, I think I can pursue a career in this?
So I lived in the Midwest, like Chicago. I lived in Naperville for a little bit, and then Dubuque, Iowa during the Bulls era, like Michael Jordan and the Bulls. And I was all in on basketball. Like, love basketball, still love basketball. And basketball is my first love. And I would have told you, I'm going to go play pro basketball. That genetics were not in my favor on that one. Like there's, I'm like a 6'4.5", 6'4", like meat stick. Like not meant to be. Like I had been a point guard, and I have no hand-eye coordination. So it became super clear that my path was not basketball, even though I loved it. And my path was very clearly going to be putting my hand on the ground as a football player. And it was just, my dad played college football as well. It was really obvious, I would say pretty early, like where my skill set slide and like where my body and genetic type was. And obviously to play football at the professional level, you got to be a genetic mutant. Like I just had my genetic code was such that it allowed me to combine that with hard work to get to those places. But you really have to have you got to be genetically there and gifted to be able to get to that point. Now you got to put a lot of work and effort into it, but there's also a ton of it has to do with the genetic makeup of yourself.
You mentioned your dad, and he played a major role in your life when it came to your career. So what lessons do you feel he instilled in you that ultimately led to your successful professional career as an athlete as well as a CEO?
I think a lot of it just has to do with resiliency, and that has to do with not giving up. My dad kind of taught me two core things, and he preached them to my brothers and sisters and I growing up. And it was right there are few things in life that are really, really important and that you can fully control. And those two things were attitude and effort. And I'm sure I've morphed them a bit over time, but I think a lot about them. And it's like, okay, there's a lot of things that are really important, and there's a lot of things that you can't control in your life. And where that Venn diagram right overlaps is the things you can control and things that are really important. And two of those are your attitude and effort, and you can do it every single day. And it was a really important moment for me, and I remember having conversations about that right after school, in a car after a game, whatever that may be, of like, what can you control? How do you approach your life? And so I really, really remember those things and those lessons around attitude and effort throughout my life of like what are the anecdotes, whether it's like we're going on a mountain bike ride in high school or just lost a football game. Whatever those things are, I think that has been very, very inspirational and something my dad gave me.
So how do you approach things that you can't control today?
Well, you just got everything goes back to what you can, and some of those things that you can't control, it's really hard, because they affect your attitude, and you got to go back and you got to reset at times, and it's really interesting, like you always get hit with the right hook that you don't see coming, and you get knocked down, but you can choose to stay down or not. And so the things you can't control a lot of times knock you down. But what you can control is how you respond to those things and what comes next. And so I think the big thing is when you're in the thick of it, you always got to back yourself out. And part of it is just surrounding yourself with some people to talk to that can help, like level set. Like get out of the woods, like share your feelings, share your emotions. Those are totally fine to be feeling. Now let's think about the next ones, and how do we elevate above the things you can't control. And sometimes you just gotta let life throw at you what it's gonna throw at you, and that's a hard one to stomach. But you don't control everything. I don't, as the CEO founder, by any stretch. And there's a lot of things that are out of my control, and all you can do is do exactly what you can.
Yeah. It's I'm probably gonna butcher the saying, but it's not. You can't control what's gonna come out of people's mouth, but you can definitely control how you react to it, right? Yeah. So you can't control what's gonna come to you. You can only control how you're going to respond to adversity, to wins, to losses, right?
Yes.
So I definitely resonate with that. You did mention about speaking to people, important people in your life. Where were there specific coaches or mentors that helped you or that helped shape you as a person or as a leader?
Yes. Really lucky, played for one of the greats in college. I went to Southern Cal, and I was there during the Pete Carroll era. And I was a two-time captain with Pete, and got to spend a lot of time with Pete. A lot of time, and got to see a lot of kind of I would say what most players don't get to see. Just got to see a lot of behind the scenes of how Pete thought, and I kind of I don't know. I also have this unique thing where I gravitated towards coaches a lot, just with my academics and how much I cared about leadership in business, and got to pick their brain and see more of how they operated and thought than I think others were. I was just very always aware, and so I got to spend a lot of time with Pete and how Pete thinks about winning and competing, how he thinks about scheduling and motivating people, and a lot of that too of how I thought about my role in my business is a lot how I think Pete thinks about his role. And I don't talk to Pete very often anymore. But when I see him, I see him once every 2 years. It's it's like yesterday. It's just one of those. It's those special things. And Pete is incredibly genuine and giving of himself in person, and very passionate. And I think one of the things I saw about Pete was he had a very strong why. And that why drove him very, very hard. And that is something that I remember. And one of our kind of core principles is know your why in our business. We ask you to do really hard things, right? It's not always easy. And knowing your why keeps you there. Pete had Pete tells the story, he failed as an NFL coach the first time, and he had a really strong why, and why he does things the way he does is because of his failure before on that. So Pete loved more than anything, and he was really, really, really good.
What's your why?
That's a really good question. I have a couple whys. Um, I would say like, why am I driven to be really successful? Um, and I've been really lucky to be around a couple families. My family, I would say, like my grandparents, my grandma and grandpa. My grandpa and grandma were very successful, and I watched them, and I was very close to them on my dad's side. I watched them make a very big impact in the world, both in their local community, but also really involved in politics back in, when politics were, bipartisan and got things done. And really the passion that they drove and that they essentially gave all of their wealth away. And what that meant to the community and what that meant to the arts. And they invested in all these incredible things along the way. And to be able to see that impact has been a very long-standing thing in my life. And what I saw was everybody can make a big impact, and we're all called to leave this world a better place. And I saw that in my grandparents very deeply on how they gave their time, their resources, right? And that was really important to me. And it really started to play a role kind of later in my collegiate career, but really in my NFL, of like when you have a soapbox to stand on, you can really affect change, right? And you can inspire and equip people. So I really have this strong why that in my life I want to make a big impact in my local communities, but also how we think about leaving this world a better place. And I take that why very seriously as a father as well, in there. But one of the big reasons, my why for Momentous and my why there is, I believe we can make I can make a big difference in the world. And then really why Momentous is, part of my life as a professional athlete, I saw how you thought about how we dealt with optimization and high performance. And when I left, right, I was, right, I got hurt a ton in college, two like career-ending injuries as a young kid, as a young adult, I should say. And I really like started thinking about optimization and how do I work around the fringes to get better. And I was sleeping before sleep was cool. I was tracking sleep. I was thinking about my macros as an offensive lineman, like all these crazy things. I was into like nutrition, supplements. I was the gym rat. I was film study, because I had to do everything right to get and stay on the field. And when I left the NFL, I walked into this world where it was like this black hole of what do I do? And there was so much information out there, but the problem was information was all crap, right? And you'd get it from your buddies, and you'd get it from Google searching, and you would never know what you're taking or why you're taking it. And I remember, like, I don't even know what supplements to take anymore. Like, I knew what to take as a pro athlete because I had a dietitian, I had a strength coach, I had an athletic trainer, I had sports medicine, right? I had all these people and high performance all kind of coming together to say, hey, your goals are X. Here's what you need to do. Oh, and here's what makes you special. And here's the right products to take. And then you come out, and it was like the sea of craziness. And so at Momentous, like we kind of say, like our vision is to democratize high performance. How do we take this knowledge and skill set and bring it to, like, bring a brand that people care about, that people can relate to, bring truly best in class products, own what we know, what we don't know about it. And, we're also like, Momentous is a supplement company. Like, we're in the charlatan of charlatan space. Like, it is the Wild West. And people don't even know it. I didn't even know how crazy it was. But I wasn't necessarily like you just kind of got given, here's the best stuff. It's like, here's the fish oil you take, here's the protein you take, here's this that you take. It's not a go figure it out and fend for yourself. But I think the big thing is why you're doing them. Like as an athlete, I didn't do everything, right? I did the things that were most important to my why as an athlete, and my biggest fears or my biggest challenges. And so also part of my why is back to, like, I believe, based upon our relationships, right, in science, to the experts, to kind of the tastemakers in the space, that we can really change our industry, right? Like our industry is the supplement space, nutrition space is an old industry, right? And it's been done the same way. Like you got a lot of like I'll call it like bro science-y type of brands that are like old school pop, and then you have a lot of really really high quality, right? I'll call them like pharmaceutical grade or sterile type of brands, right? That aren't really brands. They're just companies that make a portfolio of products. And there's not a ton of people in the middle here, right? And there's some really great, I would say, like, you know, like companies that have like one or two products that are playing in the middle that, right, are incredibly high quality products that aren't super bro-y, that sit in that middle. But there's not a great like portfolio brand. And the challenge is, as a portfolio brand, you have to help get people in the right products at the right time. So back to my why. I'm going down rabbit hole. My why is I think we can really make a difference in the world. I think Momentous has this huge platform to help get people more healthy and expand that in a really meaningful way. So like back to like how do I make the world a better place? I mean, we're having a ton of great success. We're like we've grown a ton as a business. We're really well positioned to like have my personal why on helping me in my future and affect change personally, but also the business is very well aligned to that as well. And my otherwise, I love building. I love stress. Like being a pro athlete, like you get this thing in your gut where it's like your decisions matter, your actions matter. And as the entrepreneur, CEO, founder, that is so true, right? And it's this is the closest thing I can relate to what is pro sports. Is this immense sense of responsibility and accountability, and that right, your actions matter. Like you got to have and you make a ton of mistakes, and that's okay. But like your attitude and effort matters every day. And like I felt like this great deal of stress as an athlete, and like I learned to love it. And I don't know if it was stress, maybe it was pressure. It's probably not stress, is probably the wrong word. And you feel that same way as a founder, CEO, right, of a really fast growing business. And it's just like this incredible. It's a drug almost, probably it is, you know, like in our bodies, and it's just so fascinating to me and something that I love so much. And this whole team aspect of winning, right, and setting up to win is so fun. It's like winning is fun.
Yep. Do you think what do you think is more important? Celebrating wins or learning from the losses?
Yes, that's a really good question. I think this is where sport and business differs a lot. In sports, you gotta win a lot, right? In business, you gotta learn a lot, right? Because if you always lose in sports, you aren't playing, right? Or you're out. And business, you can lose a lot because the win, like one win can outweigh 60 losses in business. Especially in the early stage when you get like, I would say we've kind of transitioned out of like this go-go phase and now are in like working through this growth phase. And now it's more like you got to have more consistent wins. But the wins truly aren't what define you, right? It's how you take losses and turn them into wins, and like think about minimizing those losses. And so just like in sports, right? Like I see like throughout the day there are multiple plays, right? You don't win every play, but you gotta compete. And right, just like this, right, this podcast, did I win or lose, right? And it's okay to lose, like, because you lose a ton in practice, but it's just a play. But you got to string a bunch of plays together that are wins, and then you got to string a bunch of practices together that are good practices, and then you got to string a bunch of those practices together that equal games, right? Like call that a month, right? In business cycle. So you got to win a month, but you can have a lot of losses in that month. But what you have to remember is you have a really quick memory, because as soon as this call ends, there's another play, there's another call, there's another thing to compete for to win. And if you don't take your learnings from current activity to future activity, and you can't process super quick, it doesn't matter. And you have to have an incredibly short memory, meaning you might get off a terrible call, or you might have to fire somebody, or something bad, like not fun, right? The next call, it might be the most important call of the month. And the world doesn't wait for you. Just like, right, the ball gets snapped is kind of one of my mantras. Like, the ball always gets snapped. Our business is moving. Every day is moving. It's going to get, like, every day. So that's a good question. Wins or losses. I don't think you learn a lot from your wins, but you don't learn that much. I mean, you learn from your wins, but your wins, you got to celebrate them, and it's important. To me, like, the only win that matters is the Super Bowl. And, like, we're still in, like, week 5 of my career, so the Super Bowl is what I'm aiming for, but you have to celebrate the wins. It's kind of like what's the end game was, like, in college it was the Rose Bowl. In the NFL, it's a Super Bowl. But you got to win all these other ones. And I think what's most important is celebrating the wins for the team, because sometimes, like, a lot of people on the team are thick in the woods, right? They can't even see the Super Bowl. You remind them of the Super Bowl. You keep reminding them, but, like, they're still in their weeds, right? And I was like that as an athlete. But as a head coach, I'm thinking, like, my win is long out. But you got to celebrate these little victories in life. And that's very important for the team, for morale, for whatever it may be. So,
speaking of team and Super Bowl, let's backpedal a little bit to the Carolina Panthers. So you walk in through the tunnel, your first game, you step onto the turf, and you're looking around. People are going crazy. Can you just paint a picture on what your first game was like?
Oh, well, playing at SC was as similar to the NFL as anything. I would say my first career start was against the Bears at Soldier Field, and it was, my third year in the NFL. And I played, I was a journeyman offensive lineman. Like, my first year, like, I practiced. I didn't play. Like, I didn't play in any games. I was really good at practicing. And my second year, I did a lot of practicing. And in my third year, I was kind of like the next man up type of scenario. So I got, like, when somebody gives up a sack, it's like they throw you in for 4 plays so that other guy can get his, butt chewed out, and then you come back out. Like, it's kind of like one of those things. But my first career start was against the Bears, and kind of growing up in that area. Like, I was actually a Bears fan as a kid, and my whole family was at the game because it's close enough, to Colorado and all those things, and tons of family still in, kind of the Chicago area. Anyways, I don't know. Like, to me, it just was like another. It was really. Like, really exciting. It was like the accumulation of something that you've worked very hard for, right? And as a child, right, like most kids, like my kids, like you, like my wife, right, dreamt of being a professional of something, whether that was a professional musician, actor. Like, we all had dreams, athlete of that. And it was just kind of this accumulation of a dream, and, like, what an honor it was. Like, I just remember walking out of the locker room, and, like, it wasn't even pregame. It was like pre-game. It was like when you just go out, like, you're not even, like, you got your sweatpants on, and you're, like, just kind of jogging around the field, warming up. Nobody's in the stands. It's like this, man, I achieved something that very few kids dream about. or that almost all kids dream about, that very few people actually get to accomplish. And it was like a very humbling experience for me. And like, there's a lot of weight that comes with that, I think. And, you know, the owner of the Panthers at the time had kind of taken a liking to me a bit, just based upon my business background and my uniqueness. He had some unique business in his background as well. And, you know, he had some really choice words for me before the game that are not repeatable. But that really was like, oh man, there's a lot of weight. And then it was like, oh, there's a lot of weight on here. So I don't know. I just think, to me, it was much more of a very humbling experience. I think about my time at USC and what was really special about USC. We played in the Coliseum. There were 2 Olympic Games there, multiple Super Bowls. I think even like the Dodgers played there. So many greats walked up and down that tunnel. You know, you think about with 2 full Olympic Games of all the incredible athletes, right? The Olympians, the medalists, the world record holders that walked through that same tunnel that we got to walk through every home game. It was always just like, to me, that gave me the goosebumps every time of like, what an honor it is to be in kind of these hallowed grounds of greatness, of people who sacrificed a lot to get to those places.
You were always surrounded by the best of the best. Therapists, coaches, nutritionists, dietitians, sports physios. In that process of your career and then ultimately you retiring, did you ever reflect and think about the gaps that maybe athletes are experiencing, even though they're surrounded by the best of the best, even during their career or maybe post-career?
Yeah, I mean, that's really how, like, that's really been the big vision around Momentous and the founding of that. And so, you know, we when we started this business, my co-founder and I, of the underlying entity behind Momentous, we were at a biotech together, and she's my COO, right hand. We've been equal partners. Her name's Erica Good. She's fantastic, right? I'm much more external, visionary, and she is just a hardcore operator and strategist, which is incredible. Like, we're this perfect balance when you think about this. But we were at a biotech together, and I joined the biotech maybe 2 years after, year and a half, 2 years after the NFL. And I wanted to join an early stage company. She was actually employee 2, I was employee 4, and we were both leading kind of, anyways, I was a really unique hire for them, but we had this cool product, a cool idea that became a cool product that ultimately was kind of this springboard, and we acquired the rights to that technology and started what is now called Momentous. Our underlying entity is called AMP-HP, but we started the business, and we started it working with Tour de France winners, Super Bowl champions, and we had this product called PR Lotion, incredibly unique. Early, we now have 10 clinical projects behind it. We've had two studies published this year, but it was doing something that had never been done before. But we were in the most elite places in the world. We're working with special forces, right, and working with these other people I mentioned. And to me, I didn't think I was going to end up back in sports. And part of the reason why I didn't think I was going to end up back in sports, because I didn't see how I could be really genuine and do something innovative, and I didn't want to be a coach, right? And so how was I going to end up in sports? And it was through revolutionary technology. And so I would say that really sprung-board us into this. But the vision was, how do we create the next great high-performance company? And it wasn't how do we sell into pro and college sports teams. It was, how do we take that access and that knowledge and bring it to the masses? Because what I saw is really elite places, right? Whether you're talking about U.S. Special Forces or Tour de France winners or Super Bowl champs or whoever it may be, they have access. They have no limitation to access to people or the best products or revolutionary technology. And they take some chances too, right? And then, you know, I kind of like, you think, I'm stealing this from somebody, but like, if you think about a pyramid and like, you know, the the top, or call it the bottom 70% of that pyramid, is all basic things that everybody knows. But those are the basics. That's like getting the right protein content. That's like working out, right? Like that's like, right? And then there's like this 20% of the pyramid that data suggests it works really, really well, right? But it's not like there's not 10,000 published clinical studies. There's not, 40,000 reps at it. But it is most likely going to become in that 70% of the pyramid. Then you have this 10% of the pyramid. And this is really things that are like the tip of the pointy spear that, you know what, in 2 years, they might be nothing. But there's early data that suggests, right? And take those chances. And as an athlete, as an elite athlete, you kind of weigh, like you try like get the 70% right, get the 20%, get 2 or 3 things in there, and then in the 10%, pick one that's most impactful for you, right? And realize the hierarchy of like that 10% might not work. And we're trying to take that approach. So if we think back to what was missing, I don't think a ton was missing in pro sports or college sports. Like it's continuing to evolve, like sports science is evolving, and sports and elite special forces in the military are leading the way in how do we still do that. Like they adopt those things. I think what's most missing in those places is, and this is the difference between being a really elite athlete and optimizing as an athlete versus optimizing as a human. To optimize as an athlete or a special forces operator, you are not thinking about longevity in your life. To be great at sports or to be a great Navy SEAL, you do things that have a terrible impact on your longevity as a human being. Because to be great and to be so siloed and so narrowly focused, you have to give up a ton, right? Like being a pro athlete is not good for your long-term health. Hard stop, right? I was an offensive lineman. I weighed 310 pounds, and it was hard for me to weigh that much. I hit my head for a living. Weighing 310 pounds and hitting your head for a living is very bad for longevity. But I was really good at what I did. I was elite. I was one of the best in the world, right? And that's the difference, I would say, is the big difference is sports and elite military, they don't think about long-term because long-term actually doesn't win. Short and medium-term wins games and championships. Long-term does not, right? If you're thinking long-term, oh, you got a concussion? Let's go sit you for 4 months. That doesn't win, right? But that's probably what's good for me to not have Alzheimer's and dementia. But I made that choice, right? Because I want to be great at something, right? So anyways, I think about this transition of what does it mean to democratize high performance? And it's taking these learnings out of pro and college sports, taking the access, the products, the quality, the innovations, the 10% of that pyramid, and bringing them to the consumer and actually educating the consumer on why. Because as an athlete, you just didn't take 100 things. You took 10 things religiously. You did those things right, and if you do those things right all the time, it wins. And I think the other thing, like the big gap, and this is part of like us trying to create the anti-supplement company. Supplements have a bad connotation. Like they do for me. Like still, like I kind of like, I'm like, man, supplement company? Why? I'm like, I don't want to be. I'm a high performance company. We're life optimizers, and what does that mean? Is getting people in the right products at the right time, but also we have to educate people on our industry and how weird our industry is, right? Like you've been in the food industry, Brian, incredibly different. If you made something vegan and had bacon in it, you would be crucified.
Yep.
Just like point blank, in our space, there is no true certifications or regulations in there. And there's only 2 third parties that really matter. Like there's only 2 third parties. There's 2 third parties that pro and college sports recognize. Nothing else matters. And it just like, because you say you're third party certified doesn't mean anything. And so when I think about product and product quality, you know, like there's studies that come out like every month that's like, oh, to me. That is, but society does not understand that, and there's so much confusion around that. I mean, there are literally products right? Like that you would say, hey, this is like, it would be like having a Beyond Meat burger with bacon in it, right? And the consumer does not think that way because the consumer is not properly educated on what the supplement nutrition category is, and what does that mean, and what are the processes, and what's cross-contamination look like. Just like, anyway, so we certify our entire product line. We failed a vitamin D production run. Vitamin D has like one ingredient in it, vitamin D, right? It has like, some anti-caking agent to help put it in pills, in the capsules. But other than that, it doesn't. We failed certification on that product because it came in contact with a banned substance at some point. That production run goes into a dumpster only because we had it certified. Nobody else is testing those things. We could have gone to market. It had a banned substance that would have made athletes test positive on a drug test. We could have sold it to consumer. That could be on the shelves at a Walmart, right? And because there's no regulatory process to do that, right? And so that's to me, that's just like fascinating that's what happens. No pro or college sports teams would ever let their athlete do that or take that. But in the consumer market, consumers don't truly understand what does that product promise mean. But it's not just what is not in your product. It's how you source, how you manufacture, and how you get people in the right products. Like as an example, like Brian, when you think of creatine, what do you think of? What do you think creatine's good for?
I actually went down a huge rabbit hole not too long ago on creatine,
Okay.
so I know a lot more now than I did before. But when I first learned about creatine, I thought water in the muscles get bigger.
Bodybuilding, right? Strength training, all of that. Creatine is one of the most important building blocks for cognitive, right? Something I didn't know, right? My number one fear in my life is cognitive health. Right? I hit my head for a living, like in my past life. I'm going to pay the price. So I invest in anything that has cognitive longevity. Creatine and omegas. Creatine, small doses of creatine daily has incredible clinical research for cognitive performance and cognitive longevity. Consumers don't even know that. Creatine is like this mysterious bad word, right? But that's part of the challenge in the space that we're in. Like, nobody's properly educating. There's 10,000 plus clinical research trials on creatine and brain health. The drugs that are prescribed to us don't have 10,000 clinical trials on them. They have like 2, right? Like creatine has like just on brain health. It's insane to me, right? And creatine monohydrate costs nothing. It's literally cheap. Like $36 for a 90-day serving might as well be nothing, right? And creatine monohydrate is a commodity. Like it is, like I tell people, creatine monohydrate is creatine monohydrate is creatine monohydrate. Make sure it's certified, that it doesn't have other things in it. You want it super clean, right? But there's just not a difference across the board. And when you think about creatine monohydrate, it is what it is. It's like a commodity almost.
Well, talking about optimization, trust, sourcing, certifications, you've also aligned yourself with arguably the most brilliant mind in optimization, which is Andrew Huberman and Huberman Labs.
Yeah.
How did that conversation start, and how did he ultimately find you guys and partner up with Momentous?
Yeah, that's a super good question. That's part of this right vision of who we are, and to me, the barriers to entry to build a supplement company are essentially zero, right? Like you and I could start a new supplement company tomorrow, and it could be Jeff and Brian's killer supplement company, right? And we could have 15 products on market in a month. Easy, cool branding, cool logo, all of that. But to me, what we were doing early on and who we were working with, it was so important to do it very differently, right? My goal is not to just build a supplement company. My goal is to transform how people think about wellness and optimization and democratize what's happening at the elite levels and bring it down to the masses. And so working with the best was super core from day one. And kind of when we first started the company a little over 5 years ago was, let's build the best scientific advisory board in the world. Let's try to, right? We were in these really unique places. And with this product PR Lotion, we were doing such cool, unique things that we got a lot of the smart people interested, right? And one of the things, like, I'm not a scientist. Like, I got my master's in business, and I'm like a, knuckle dragger offensive lineman. Like, I'm really passionate about the space, but I also know what I know and know what I don't know. And we went in and said, hey, we're committed to doing clinical research on this product. And people kind of looked at me and was like, no, you're not. Everybody says they're going to do clinical research. It costs a lot of money. We invested a ton of money. We also won government contracts to do clinical research to validate it. Like, we went a really hard path on this, and that really endeared us in this community. And then this just vision to how do we democratize and this, product promise that we don't do a great job at describing yet. It's coming, right? Like, we're launching a new website. By the time this goes live, we'll have a new website, and we're redefining how we talk about products and educate people around how much clinical research is behind them, what they actually do, and all those things. But part of this was like we built this ecosystem in high performance and optimization. And Huberman was in that ecosystem. And so before I bought the Momentous brand 2 years ago, I'd known Huberman, and he had just been starting his podcast. But I actually got introduced to Andrew before his podcast, even, as he was just like a Stanford professor, right? And he had been on Rogan. It was like, hey, this person is a leader. But we were in like the same circles within U.S. Special Forces and in some of the clinical research and experts. Like, we just kept crossing paths on there. And what we're trying to build, and Andrew and I started to talk, and it became super clear, like, this, our visions were pretty aligned, and what we were really passionate, our why, right? Like, his why is very similar to my why and the company's why. It's democratize high performance, right? How do we make this world a better place and give better products, better knowledge, better access? And that's what the Huberman Lab podcast does. And so we kind of we aligned on this vision, and still very aligned on it. And then it's just so important for us, right, to build the right products with the right people. So Andrew's a part of our scientific advisory board, and we leverage that board to help us build products. And Andrew's got great insights and great connections. But for me, I don't believe that the smartest people in the world live inside companies like mine. If you're really, really good at what you do, you're probably living in a pro sports locker room. You're probably living in U.S. Special Forces doing cool secret scroll shit. Or you're a professor, right? Like, doing clinical research, studying this stuff. Those are the experts in human performance and optimization. Why do I think we're going to have smarter, commercially minded people? Like, we have really smart people. We don't have the experts. So we leverage those experts to help build our products. Talk about what we know about the products, all of those things. So Andrew really aligned, and so that partnership, has really grown over, I'd say, over the last 16 months. We launched it officially probably 16 months ago, and it's been a huge component of our business. But it's something that we're going to continue to do. And Andrew's just shot through the stratosphere. But we work with one of the leaders in female performance named Stacey Sims, Kelly Starrett, who's like an OG, but an incredible, New York Times bestseller twice, but mobility, connective tissue health. We work with Andy Galpin, who's one of the top exercise physiologists in the world. There's just all of these people across the board that we have a part of our community and that help us do that. And Andrew is he's got the biggest pulpit. He is changing the world for good, and he is 3 years ago. Hey, anybody gonna listen to a 2.5 hour science podcast? Yeah, 12 people, right? That would have been my answer.
Yeah,
he's the top 5 podcast in the world, right? And his podcasts are 2.5, 3 hours long, and they're deep, right? And it just shows people are incredibly hungry and curious for this stuff. And COVID helped change some of people's mentality, but he's done something that people said was impossible. Nobody would have guessed would have happened. So anyways, we've been very lucky to align with Andrew in a pretty meaningful way.
Jeff, I can talk to you for another 4 hours, but I know you got to go. So if people want to learn more about Momentous or you, where should they go?
Yeah, go to livemomentous.com. You can just Google Momentous, will show up too.
Cool.
And,
Jeff,
my LinkedIn, my LinkedIn is also a decent place, but it's kind of I'm not super active on it all the time, but ping me if you want to connect.
Okay. Jeff, I really want to have you back again. Well, I have so many more questions to ask you, so we need to definitely come back in a couple months or so. But Jeff, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Ryan, thank you, truly. That was impactful.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, take care.
See ya.